pushing 94. Have you made it?
Pushed over it.
Albert was born in Nanaimo in 1915, and his father worked in the coal mines. He became a volunteer firefighter at 17 because he was hanging around the fire hall.
Right.
And then he eventually became a real firefighter.
Right. For 43 years.
And he was deputy fire chief, and therefore was involved with the trying to put out the fire in Chinatown.
Yes, we had an awful job tracing Wardle that day.
Oh, yes.
We just found two empty cans. We found 2 empty cans from gasoline in his garage.
Oh, okay. You heard it here first? Probably not. Probably third, fourth. Anyway, Albert is going to tell about growing up in Nanaimo, and he's actually going to introduce Judge Wardle at the end after that.
Am I ever?
But just remember, Shirley also needs space. So you know, you just.
I don't want much space.
We know Shirley.
Yeah, well, I'm just warning you. That's all. Okay. You ready?
Ready.
All right.
I'm ready. My dad was born in 1875 in Somerset, England. And my grandfather was killed on a runaway team, which meant that the kids were on the loose. And they had no relief in those days, but they had a parish relief, which would look after the mother. So my dad and at 8 years of age, and his brother and his younger sister were indentured on a farm. At 12, he was driving team on the farm. At 15, he got fed up with it, and he ran away from Somerset, England, over the border, and went down the Welsh coal mines as a coal miner, at age 15. And he stayed with them till. Now, it didn't hurt him because he lived to 96. But some of the stories he told, one of the stories he told, in one place he was working, he was on his side in 18 inches digging coal all day long. It was a hard life, but it was a good life when they were working. And we had a system in town here where you listen every night at 5 o'clock, everything stopped in the night. And you listen to the whistle. 1 whistle, work tomorrow, everybody smiled. 2 whistles, no work. And that's how your life was ruined and looked after for the rest of your life. However, Dad came out because they had trouble in Wales. The union was moving in, and the companies didn't want the union, and they were out of work, and so he had 2 brother-in-laws working in Cumberland, and they told him to come out here. So he came out here and went right to Cumberland to work. He worked for 3 years, and he had enough money to send back to get my mother and my 2 older brothers and my older sister. And then there was 2 boys and a girl born in Canada. And so you know the trouble we had with those Welshies. Anyway, we grew up in Nanaimo, and the house where I was born in 1915 is still at 216 Selby Street, right next to the radiator shop. It's still there. I took pictures for the kids, and they've got them now in their history things. But I traced it back through the weatherman, and it was one of the worst winters that I've ever had. And the result was that my dad, I was born on the 23rd of December, the best Christmas present my mother ever had. But Dad never got out for snow and one thing or another till the 16th of January. So I always thought I was a year younger than I was. So I had to tack it on. Anyway, we grew up, we had a good life. Nanaimo was a good place. Coal miners and their wives were lovely people. They really were, really lovely people. You could go anybody. Oh, you're Charlie Dunn's old boy, and they rub your head. You like an apple, son? Oh, yes. We were always hungry. You eat whatever they got, you know, and these things all came natural to them. I heard him talking about his not locking his doors. We never locked our doors. And if we did, the key was left there for you. We'd come home and there'd be a note on the kitchen table. Miriam, that's my mother. And the Welsh lady came over. Miriam, I owe you a cup of flour. I will bring it back tomorrow. And you never bothered. You never bothered. It was just there. And as kids growing up, the highlight, as I remember, my whole childhood, was the miners' picnics. And the miners' picnics were really something. Did you remember them? You that old? Somebody told you about it. Anyway, the miners would go down, and in those days the protection mine was working, #1 mine, and they were connected under the water. But the miners all went over on a big scow, and the miners' union would get together, and they'd go down and they'd clean the scows and brush them and get all the coal dust off them and lay down papers. And then the mums and the kids would all come down. We'd go to Newcastle Island. And we had 3 of those picnics in the summertime. And they were the highlight of our kids. You think about those things. We got 3 things. We got 3 tickets. We got a chocolate bar, we got a drink, and we got an ice cream cone. And if you're smart like me, you went up where the men were drinking beer. Because they, oh, Charlie Dunn's boy, here you are, a great big chunk of cheese. I cheated. Nothing. Remember, I've got to introduce you. Be careful. Anyway, we went to school. I went to Northward School to grade 4, and then we went to Central School. You remember that one too?
It was not for me, it was my mother's Central School, John Shaw, for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, John Shaw. Yeah, a little later. Anyway, Saturdays and Sundays, we'd be down on the Coalworth fishing for codfish. And we'd get the codfish and we'd take them to the Chinese bunkhouse that was right down where the high rises down on by the waterfront. We'd sell these to them. If we couldn't sell them to them, we'd go up to Chinatown and they would buy all the fish we could take out. That gave us pocket money, so on Saturday afternoon we could go down to Mackenzie's candy store and get 6 suckers for a nickel, and my chum would get 6 for his nickel, and he'd get the browns and I'd get the red and green ones, and we'd be all through the show, we'd get changed. We got different kinds to eat all the time. And we did pretty well. We did the usual things. We played softball and those things. And then, of course, everything went to pieces because the Depression hit. 1929, the stock market collapsed. Everything. There was no work. There was 7 out of 8 out of work in our house, for not for a day or a month, but for years. And people on relief. I come out of school at 17 and a half out of high school, and literally the back end of my pants was out. Literally. I used to take my sweater off and tie the in front here to go home. It was tough. It was tough. However, it taught me a lot of things. Shut up. It taught me a lot of things, how to save your money and things like that. Made me far too conservative because I wouldn't go to the bank and borrow $10,000 for a good deal. I knew it was a good deal. I wouldn't do it. My chum told me one day, and he says, "You got $100?" I says, "Barely. I was saving to get married." And he says, "Well," he says, "we can get 5 lots for $25 a piece. 5 for $100." I said, "Where at?"